Australia has over 7.5 million square kilometres of land. Most of it has never been photographed, never mapped in detail, and never turned into a tourist brochure. The country travellers think they know ends at Sydney Harbour Bridge, the Great Barrier Reef, and Uluru. Stretch past those postcard images and something shifts. The red desert opens into valleys carved by water that stopped flowing 40,000 years ago. Caves drop into underground worlds where no sunlight has ever reached. Australia hides its secrets behind distance. Just distance, and the simple reality that most people never bother to drive far enough. Today, we are changing that. These are 21 places hidden across this continent that most Australians have never visited and most of the world has never heard of. If you find yourself learning something today that you wish you had known before your last trip, hit subscribe. We cover Australian history, hidden places, and stories the mainstream travel industry never tells you. Number 1. Inaminka, South Australia. Most people have heard of Burke and Wills. Fewer know where to find the spot they died. In the far northeast corner of South Australia, near Cooper Creek at the edge of the Strzelecki Desert, Inaminka is one of the most remote townships on the continent. A population hovering around 10 permanent residents, a single pub, a roadhouse, and a gravestone. Robert Burke died near here in June 1861, his body found by a search party that arrived just hours too late. The surrounding wetlands tell a completely different story to the desert around them. When Cooper Creek floods after rare inland rain, the normally dry channel transforms into a 200-kilometre stretch of shallow lakes teeming with pelicans, herons and brolgers moving across silver water against red sandhills. Inaminka sits on top of geological time, and almost nobody goes there. Number 2. Cocklebiddy Cave, Western Australia. Along the Nullarbor Plain in Western Australia, deep within an area most drivers cross without stopping, lies the entrance to one of the longest underwater cave systems ever explored. Cocklebiddy Cave descends beneath the flat limestone plain into a flooded tunnel stretching more than 6 kilometres through permanent darkness. In 1983, a French diving team completed the first full traverse, spending days moving through black water with equipment designed for cave exploration. The cave begins as a dry chamber, the sunlit entrance surrounded by saltbush and wedge-tailed eagles circling overhead, before dropping sharply into the flooded sump. The Nullarbor surface above is one of the flattest landscapes on Earth. The cave beneath it is among the most complex underwater labyrinths in existence. The contrast between those two worlds exists only 12 metres apart vertically. Number 3. Dalhousie Springs, South Australia. In the far north of South Australia, roughly 600 kilometres from the nearest town, natural thermal springs push water to the surface from the Great Artesian Basin below. The Dalhousie Springs complex contains over 60 individual springs, each releasing water that has been underground for over 1 million years. The temperature hovers around 38 degrees Celsius year-round, creating pools ringed with fine pale sand where desert goby fish, found nowhere else on Earth, swim in slow circles. The surrounding landscape is Gibberstone Desert, stretching to every horizon. The Simpson Desert lies to the east. The approach road is four-wheel drive only, and the nearest fuel is hours away in each direction. Visitors describe floating in ancient artesian water under a black outback sky with no light visible anywhere as something that photographs cannot capture. Number 4. Lawnhill Gorge, Queensland. In the remote northwest corner of Queensland, a green canyon cuts through dry savanna landscape in a way that looks like it was dropped from a different continent. Lawnhill Gorge, part of Boojamoola National Park, holds a creek system lined with freshwater crocodiles, pandanus palms, and ancient sandstone walls rising 30 metres from the water. The gorge has been continuously occupied by the Wa'anyi people for 60,000 years. making it one of the longest, continuously inhabited sites in human history. Canoes can be paddled along the emerald green waterway between walls, painted in deep orange and red, the surface reflecting a canopy of paper barks and figs. Rock art dating back thousands of years marks the overhangs above the waterline. The drive requires crossing floodplain country impassable for several months, and that isolation keeps the gorge almost entirely unknown outside of far north Queensland. Number 5. Lake Mungo, New South Wales. The walls of China are not in China. They are a 40-kilometre stretch of lunette dunes on the western edge of the Willandra Lakes region in far southwest New South Wales, containing the oldest human remains found in Australia. Mungo Man, discovered in 1974 by geologist Jim Bowler, was buried here approximately 42,000 years ago in a formal ceremony that included red ochre applied to the body. The discovery rewrote the archaeological understanding of human migration across the world. The landscape at Lake Mungo is a dried lake bed surrounded by pale crescent-shaped dunes, stripped bare by wind to reveal layers of ancient clay and sand. Wedge-tailed eagles circle above the exposed shoreline of a lake that dried up 15,000 years ago. Walking this site means walking through geological and human time simultaneously. Footsteps pressing into clay that once held 40,000-year-old human prints. Number 6. The Bungle Bungles, Western Australia. The Bungle Bungles of Purnululu National Park were not formally documented by Western science until 1983, despite being known to Aboriginal communities for thousands of years. The formations are beehive-shaped sandstone towers, striped in alternating bands of orange silica and dark grey lichen, rising from the dry spinifex plains of the East Kimberley. Some towers stand 30 metres above the surrounding plain. The orange and black banding exists because silica-rich layers resist weathering, while darker bands retain moisture and allow cyanobacteria to grow on the rock's surface. The result is a landscape that appears almost deliberately constructed, massive rounded towers with precise horizontal stripes across a desert basin. Cathedral Gorge inside the formation opens into a natural amphitheatre, curved sandstone walls rising to a narrow band of blue sky above a floor of fine orange sand. Number 7. The Horizontal Falls, Western Australia. In the remote Buccaneer Archipelago off the Kimberley coast, one of the most unusual tidal events on Earth occurs twice daily. The horizontal falls are not traditional waterfalls. They are a phenomenon where the tidal difference between two adjacent gorges cut through Maclady Range creates a powerful horizontal surge of seawater through two narrow gaps in the sandstone cliffs. The tidal range along this stretch of the Kimberley coast reaches around 11 metres, and as the tide rises faster on one side than it can pass through the narrow gap, water piles up and forces through at speeds reaching 8 knots. The deep turquoise water rushing through red sandstone cliffs at that speed, viewed by floatplane or approached by speedboat, is one of the few places on Earth where the physics of tidal mechanics is visible to the naked eye. Number 8. Mitchell Falls, Western Australia. To reach Mitchell Falls in the North Kimberley, travellers fly in by helicopter from the coastal community at Kalamburu, or complete a multi-day walk through spinifex grassland and sandstone escarpment country. The waterfall drops in 4 tiers across a sandstone plateau, the lowest plunge falling into a deep clear pool surrounded by Livistona palms and paper barks. Above the falls, the Mitchell River runs wide and shallow over orange stone in the dry season, with freshwater crocodiles resting on exposed rock shelves in the afternoon heat. The 4-tiered fall, seen from the eastern rim of the gorge at first light, mist rising off the lower pool and the early sun turning the sandstone copper, is the image people who have made this journey carry with them for years. No photograph fully prepares anyone for the scale of it in person. Number 9. Morning Glory Roll Cloud, Gulf of Carpentaria. Between late September and early November each year, a rare atmospheric event appears over the Gulf of Carpentaria, visible from the small town of Burketown on the Albert River floodplains. The morning glory is a rolling cylindrical cloud stretching up to 1,000 kilometers in length, rolling from northeast to southwest at speeds up to 60 kilometers per hour, sometimes at altitudes as low as 100 meters above the flat Gulf savanna. The formation occurs when cool air from the Torres Strait collides with warm, humid air rising from the heated land surface, creating a solitary atmospheric wave that rolls through the lower sky at dawn. Glider pilots travel from across the world to Burketown specifically to ride the updrafts along the leading edge of the cloud, surfing the atmospheric wave in silence. The morning glory does not occur reliably anywhere else on Earth. Number 10. Tunnel Creek, Western Australia. In the Napier Range near Fitzroy Crossing in the West Kimberley, an ancient limestone reef that once lay beneath the Devonian Sea has been carved by a small creek into a natural tunnel 350 metres long. Tunnel Creek is the oldest cave system in Western Australia, passing completely through the reef from a dry gorge entrance through cool darkness to a sunlit exit pool on the northern side. The interior is a series of wading passages and dry chambers, with freshwater crocodiles on submerged ledges in the permanent pools inside. Fruit bats hang from the limestone ceiling in clusters, the smell of guano thick in the cool underground air. In the 1890s, Aboriginal resistance fighter Jandamara, known as Pigeon, used these tunnels as a hideout during his campaign against colonial police. His story is as celebrated in the Kimberley as Ned Kelly is in Victoria, but almost entirely unknown outside of Western Australia. Number 11. Arkaroola Wilderness Sanctuary, South Australia. In the northern Flinders Ranges of South Australia, beyond the small town of Copley and accessible by rough dirt road through mulga scrub country, lies Arkaroola Wilderness Sanctuary. The landscape is Precambrian geology at its most exposed, with ridges of quartzite and granite twisted by tectonic forces acting over 600 million years, creating formations that resemble the surface of another planet. The sanctuary contains some of the least light-polluted night skies in the southern hemisphere. On clear nights, the Milky Way core is visible as a dense band of white light, crossing the sky above razor-edged quartzite ridgelines. The Ridgetop Tour, passable only in modified four-wheel drive vehicles, takes visitors to vantage points where the ancient broken landscape opens to the horizon in every direction without a single structure in view. Number 12. Wilpena Pound, South Australia. In the heart of the Flinders Ranges, a natural geological amphitheatre, roughly 80 square kilometres in area, sits hidden behind a wall of quartzite peaks. Wilpena Pound is a synclinal basin. Its ring of mountains, the eroded remnants of folded rock pushed upward over 500 million years ago. From inside the pound, the surrounding peaks create a perfect natural bowl, its floor covered in river-red gums, yellow-footed rock wallabies, and creek beds lined with smooth river stones. From the air, the shape is unmistakable, an oval formation with walls rising to 800 meters in a complete ring. The Adnyamathanha people have lived here for tens of thousands of years, the peaks holding deep significance within their lore. Brakina Gorge on the western edge exposes a geological timeline in the road-cut rock, each layer representing millions of years of ancient seabed, readable by anyone driving through at sunset. Number 13. Kuta Kuta Caves, Northern Territory. South of Katherine in the Northern Territory, a limestone karst landscape breaks through the Arnhem Plateau's sandstone country. The Kuta Kuta Caves are a system of limestone towers and underground chambers formed in dolomite, a rock type that rarely produces karst features anywhere in Australia. The tower karst above ground looks like a cluster of rounded stone columns rising from dry woodland floor, covered in grey lichen and ringed with kurrajong trees. Underground, the caves hold stalactite and stalagmite formations rarely seen in Australian limestone systems, along with brown tree snakes resting in the cave ceiling and ghost bats clustered in the darker recesses. The Jawoyn people, traditional custodians, consider the Kuta Kuta landscape inhabited by a serpent being called the Nabal Goon, whose presence is linked to illness affecting those who disturb certain areas within the site. Number 14. Cape Grim, Tasmania. At the northwest tip of Tasmania, where the wild Southern Ocean meets the edge of the Australian continent, a monitoring station perched on basalt sea cliffs has been measuring atmospheric air quality continuously since 1976. Cape Grim is considered to have the cleanest measured air anywhere on Earth. The prevailing westerly winds arriving here have crossed open ocean for thousands of kilometers, carrying no industrial pollutants, no agricultural chemicals, and no urban particulates. The readings recorded at Cape Grim are used by atmospheric scientists worldwide as the baseline standard for unpolluted air on the planet. The station sits above cliffs, where Bass Strait seabirds nest in the rock faces and fur seals haul out on wave-washed platforms below. The surrounding coastline is deeply cut, with sea caves carved by Southern Ocean swell rolling in without interruption from the South Atlantic. Number 15. Macquarie Island, Tasmania. Roughly 1,500 kilometres south of Hobart in the Southern Ocean, halfway between Australia and Antarctica. A narrow strip of land, 34 kilometres long, rises from the meeting point of the Pacific and Indo-Australian tectonic plates. Macquarie Island is the only place on Earth where rocks from the Earth's mantle are exposed at sea level, brought to the surface by the collision of two oceanic plates over millions of years. The island is windswept tussock grassland, home to royal penguins and the world's largest colony of southern elephant seals, where males weighing up to 4,000 kilograms haul up grey gravel beaches to breed each spring. The noise of competing elephant seals, combined with the smell of kelp and the constant Southern Ocean wind, makes this place feel unlike any other environment in the Australian territory. It receives fewer than 500 visitors per year. Number 16. Rowley Shoals, Western Australia. 260 kilometres off the Kimberley coast of Western Australia, 3 coral atolls sit on the edge of the continental shelf where the Timor Sea drops into deep ocean. The Rowley Shoals are among the most pristine coral reef systems on the planet, accessible only by live-aboard dive vessel from Broome, a journey of 12 to 14 hours offshore. The tidal exchange through the atoll passes drives nutrient-rich deep water upward across the reef platform, feeding a density of marine life comparable to the healthiest sections of the Great Barrier Reef, but visited by perhaps a few hundred divers per year in total. Manta rays, grey reef sharks, schooling barracuda, and large formations of staghorn coral line the pass walls at every tide change. The water visibility regularly exceeds 40 metres, and the coral here looks the way the barrier reef looked before human pressure began altering it. Number 17. Undara Lava Tubes, Queensland. About 250 kilometres southwest of Cairns, the McBride Volcanic Province holds the longest lava tube system formed from any single volcanic event on the planet. The Undara lava tubes were formed approximately 190,000 years ago when a shield volcano released enormous flows of basaltic lava across the surrounding savanna. As the lava surface cooled and hardened, the interior continued flowing outward, leaving behind hollow tubes up to 20 meters in diameter, stretching over 160 kilometers from the source vent. The tubes are cool, dark tunnels accessed through collapsed roof sections, where fig trees grow roots hanging several meters into the darkness, guided by the humidity from the tunnel entrances. Inside the tubes, microbat colonies in the hundreds of thousands emerge at dusk in rotating spirals above the entry points, the collective sound of their wings audible from 100 meters away. Number 18. Cape Levesque, Western Australia. At the northernmost tip of the Dampier Peninsula in Western Australia, a headland of deep red Pindon cliffs drops directly to turquoise shallow water above a sandbar of brilliant white silica. Cape Levesque is approximately 210 kilometers north of Broome, along a dirt road passing through several Aboriginal communities before reaching the Cape. The traditional custodians are the Bardi Jawi people, whose ranger program manages the surrounding marine park. The visual contrast between the red Pindan cliffs, the white sand, and the blue water here is more striking in person than any photograph manages to convey. Humpback whales move through the offshore channel between July and October. The sunset from the western beach, the red cliffs deepening in colour as the Timor Sea turns from blue to gold to orange, permanently changes how people think about Australian colour and scale. Number 19. Kadithandar Lake Air, South Australia. In the northeast of South Australia, a salt lake 9,300 square kilometres in area sits at the lowest point on the Australian continent, roughly 15 metres below sea level. For most years, Kadithandar Lake Air is a blinding white plain of salt crust stretching to a featureless horizon, the surface cracked into polygonal patterns by extreme evaporation under summer sun. Then, perhaps 3 times in a century, rainfall across the inland drainage system sends water across the salt flat. When the lake fills, it becomes one of the most dramatic bird events in Australia. Pelicans, banded stilts, and red-necked avocets arrive from across the continent within days, appearing to navigate directly to a lake that had been dry for years. The 2010 fill event brought tens of thousands of banded stilts to breed on temporary islands before the water evaporated once again. Number 20. The Lost City, Litchfield National Park, Northern Territory. In the southern section of Litchfield National Park, about 120 kilometres south of Darwin, a cluster of sandstone pillars rises from the monsoon woodland on top of a sandstone escarpment. The Lost City is a series of weathered sandstone blocks and columns shaped by millions of years of wet season rain and chemical weathering into forms that genuinely resemble the ruins of an ancient built structure. Some columns stand 5 meters tall, their flat tops covered in spinifex grass, and their sides grooved by parallel drainage channels cut by thousands of wet seasons. The area receives fewer visitors than the popular Litchfield waterholes, partly because the access track requires a 4-wheel drive and the formation is not prominently signposted. Walking among the columns at dusk, when low orange light strikes the weathered rock and firebirds call from the surrounding woodland, gives the landscape a quality photographs cannot capture. Number 21. Eucla, Western Australia. Just inside the Western Australian border on the Nullarbor Plain, the former telegraph station of Eucla sits buried to its roofline in coastal sand dunes. The station was built in 1877 to relay communications between Adelaide and Perth, a critical link connecting the two cities for the first time. By the 1920s, the telegraph line had been replaced by a more direct inland route, and the town of Eucla began losing its purpose. The coastal dunes, driven by constant southern ocean winds, began moving inland. Within decades, the original stone station had been swallowed to its upper walls by white coastal sand, its arched doorways half buried and filling steadily each season. Today, the ruins stand on a beach below the Air Highway Roadhouse, accessible by a short walk down the dune face. The stone walls rise from the sand at odd angles, and through the arched window frames, new dune growth is slowly completing what the decades of wind first began. These 21 places cover barely a fraction of what Australia hides. Each one required serious distance, a 4-wheel drive, or the willingness to drive past the last petrol station. The buried telegraph station, the ancient artesian springs, and the underground lava world are there for anyone who chooses to go look. Subscribe and check the next video on screen. There is more out there.